Hi, Honest Discussioner here. This video is a response to MigKillertwo's video, Why the Cause of the Universe Must Be Personal, a reading from Reasonable Faith. Now, Reasonable Faith is a book by William Lane Craig, and Mig's video is mostly just the reading. So I may refer to Mig and Craig interchangeably. They're technically both using this argument. Now, Mig's using this passage to argue the title of his video, trying to show how God must be the cause of the universe and how it must be a personal God, or at least it's a mind of some sort. He begins reading at a point where Craig is explaining different types of causation. There's event-event, state-state, and state-event causation, according to the argument. Event-event is what Mig describes as scientific causation. It's the kind we're all used to, Newtonian action-reaction sort of thing. State-state, a little bit more confusing. It's a state of affairs causing another state of affairs, and both of them are eternal, apparently. Now, I'd argue that there's really no difference between state-state and event-event causation, or that there's no such thing as state-state causation at all. It seems, Mig, that you and Craig are looking at causation as though it were one way. This isn't really how things work, though. As with the example of the brick hitting the window that Craig uses. The brick does act upon the window, but remember, the window is also acting upon the brick. From our perspective, it seems as though the brick is doing something to the window, but in reality, they're affecting each other. A better example is when you push someone, or you push something. We often think about that in relation to what it does to the thing that's being pushed. And we often don't think about what's happening to the thing that's doing the pushing. You push someone and it appears as though the only effect is knocking that person back, but technically the thing being pushed is also pushing back just as hard. This is just, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Thank you, Newton. As well, quantum physics shows that you cannot cause something to happen without something happening to what caused it. Thank you, wildcard, for that one. Therefore, for the purposes of this discussion, result may be a better word than effect. Cause and result, I believe, is more apt to describe what happens in the universe here. Now, how this applies to state-state causation, according to you and William and Craig, state-to-state causation only exists between two eternal entities. As you state a piece of wood, as Craig states, as an example, a piece of wood floating eternally on water. That would be an example of state-to-state causation. Now, if the wood ever began to float, this would be an example of event causation, according to Craig, or as I'm calling it, event-result causation. But anyway, now here's the problem. What would be the result of two eternal states interacting? I would posit it would invariably change the states that are interacting with each other, thus rendering their states non-eternal. The example that Craig uses with the piece of wood is that he says that water having a surface tension causes a piece of wood to float on the surface, and it need not ever have begun to exist that way. It just eternally existed that way. However, the result of the wood floating isn't caused by just surface tension. It's the properties of the water, which include surface tension. Interacting with the properties of the wood. A different material, say a lead ball, would not float on that same water. One state doesn't cause another state. It's two states interacting to achieve one result that affects both of the states. Therefore, in order for these two eternal entities to affect one another, they must interact with one another, and interactions require time. However, you can't have something that exists in time exist eternally within time. Therefore, the wood cannot float on the water eternally, and therefore state-state or state-result relationships don't really exist, and there would be only event-event or event-result relationships. Now, this is most notable in Craig's example of a man sitting eternally and through his own free will chooses to stand up, but this standing up violates his eternally sitting state. Something that's eternal, a state that's eternal, must always exist in that state. Therefore, a man eternally sitting cannot freely choose or even be caused to stand up. And if that happens, then if he does stand up, then he was never eternally sitting. In order for a state to be eternal, it must always remain in that state. There can't be a point when it's in a different one. Now, Craig tries to defend this on his website, Reasonable Faith, link in the sidebar, saying a person can exist changelessly and then freely choose to execute a certain intention because free will doesn't require any antecedent determining conditions. I think I pronounced that right. But this defense removes the from eternity part of the argument, and all Craig is describing is event-result causation and not free will, as I'll show later. Now, the last part of this is the important part, the state-event interaction. This is the God part, which describes an eternal entity that never changes, existing timelessly, and through its own free will chooses or eternally intends to cause something. So we have an eternal state causing something at a specific moment in time, here which is the beginning of time, and is therefore an event. Unfortunately, in order to create something within time, that entity would have to enter time, and Craig even admits on his website, again link in the sidebar, that at the moment of creation, God enters time. Oh no, that's not. That's on Reasonable Faith. That's from that page 156. By entering time, this is a change of state for God, thus making his state not unchanging. The idea of God freely choosing to create the universe while being timeless is by itself untenable. As Craig states on his website for Reasonable Faith, this one I think is actually on the website, one can have unchanging intentions. So long as one's intentions don't change, they can be timelessly held. However, the very nature of intentions is that you intend to do something, as in the future. As I move my arm, I'm not intending to move my arm. I am actually moving my arm. I intended before I moved it, but intentions stop at action. If I intended to move my arm and instead moved my foot, I would have intended, as in past tense. Intentions can't be timeless. They require there to be a future time. Therefore, a timeless being cannot intend. And therefore, if God created the universe, then it would not be by free will, as will denotes either choice or intent, which is reliant on time, and you're trying to say God was timeless. Therefore, the creation of the universe would have to be created simultaneously with the existence of God. If you're going to posit that the state the state of God, which is unchanging and timeless, caused the universe to be created, then as God exists, so does the universe, and you could not have God existing without the universe. Now, I also want to tackle this idea of agency in the first place. Now, I believe the existence of agency can only be one of two things, maybe three. The third one's really not that important. The third one's just randomness, and if you really want to talk about that, PM me. If anyone has another option than the ones I'm going to present, please let me know. I don't want to present a false dichotomy or trichotomy or whatever. Either agency is an ability, an allowance of possibility, that's the first option, or it is an entity that has an individual nature and properties. You could say that this is what the soul is and what makes us individuals. The third one is that it's just randomness, again, as I went over before. So anyway, if agency and free will is the first option, which is an ability, then there's really no difference between my agency and free will and everyone else's. If that's the case, then there really isn't free will at all, for the only difference in how we would use that ability lies in other determining factors, such as the environment, and as Craig states on the Reasonable Faith website, the very nature of free will is the absence of causal determinants. So there's a contradiction there, because the environment would be a major causal determinant if you're going to posit that free will is just the ability to do things, to make choices. Now, if agency is an entity, such as the soul, then it has a nature due to the way in which it was created by God. God would be the creator of human agency if it exists. I'm assuming Meg would hold to that. Therefore, the way in which God created the said agency would count as a determining factor, which according to Craig, again, does not make it free. If you posit God has free will, as Meg and Craig both are, then the way he designed your individual agency, along with human nature and biology, is an outside determinant to your actions. So therefore there can't really be free will under that way either. So the idea of agent causation in either case, God is an eternal timeless state, with free will, or humans with free will granted by God, is untenable. And that's why if what created the universe is a conscious entity, then it is not timeless, unchanging, or most of the classical traits of what is considered God. Therefore, I don't really think that God would, that this argument shows that God or a mind is the creator of the universe. So that's about it. I hope to hear your response, Meg. Have a nice day. Honest Discussioner, out.